Okay, man, a bunch of stuff has changed. This 50 BMG project of mine has evolved monstrously. I feel like I should keep you up to speed here. I've got stuff, bunch of stuff here that we haven't seen before. An internet friend of mine offered me such a deal on some barrels, some stainless Bart lines that were set up for a project. He does contract work, he does bulk runs of barrels, and these were, I guess, extras from a project that shall not be named. But he recognized that they fall right into my thing here. They're the size I'm looking for. So he offered me, I ended up getting 2 more Bart line barrels. A couple of stainless barrels here. I'm excited about this. This camera is too high. I just got a while here to go and bring you up to speed. I've been shooting, I've been loading, I've been recutting chambers, I've been working on and ironing out the details on this 50 BMG case, this 50 BMG cartridge. So before I lose touch, I hope this isn't just TMI to the max, because those of you that are interested in doing something with a 50 BMG will probably sit through this, because everything that I'll try to touch on is relevant. And in this subject of relevance, which has been my focus lately, I'm validating and relevating a lot of the stuff that I've been talking about for 2-3 years, for 20 or 30 years. This 50 BMG makes stuff so stinking easy, because it blows up the problems. It turns everything into a situation. For instance, one of my guns is a super lightweight, and I showed you in an earlier video as how I was doing a slip fit on the... I had convinced myself that a slip fit on these muzzle brake threads should hold. I mean, Morse tapers hold against rotation, and I had this whole thing in my mind. So I did some really scrupulously fitted muzzle brakes, and I tested them on the recoil sled. I'm testing a whole host of things. I'm loading, I'm testing new brass versus old brass. I'm only using 1 bullet, but I'm testing H50 BMG is on this side, and over here on this side is Reloader 50. I'm finding out how many times I can load these, and I'm going through all the trials and tribulations of working out the bugs, and everything is hugified. It's so cool. So I've been tempted for a long time to do this muzzle brake thing. I don't know if I have any of them in here. I think they're all out being remodified, as the term is. Because luckily I'm doing all this on the recoil, not luckily, it's good planning. I have had to do some sincere modifications. First of all, I had a gun that I thought might blow up. I cut it down further than anybody would give me permission to do. Now I'm convinced it's not dangerous and it won't blow up, and that I didn't make a mistake, because it rationalizes to be the same as most 308s and 30-06s and 338 lights. In fact, a lot of the 338 Lapuas offer less support. Some of the Weatherbees offer less support. Granted, there's been some Weatherbees, fluted 416R stainless, that have blown, not dangerously, but they've blown open if they're fluted. So I'm aware of all these things. I've been running hoop stress analyses. But bottom line is, I've been shooting just about everything off the recoil sled on this super light gun. I've been making brass, I've been making loads, and lo and behold, I blew a muzzle brake right down the range. And it was on the sled. The gun's working. The recoil on the sled, where it's set up, has been about 12 inches. 11 to 13 going through my tests. I can't get it up to 14 even with the hottest loads wrecking the brass. Muzzle brake blew off, not on a hot load, on a factory load, and that sled came back over 2 feet. Had I been sitting behind it, I'd probably be looking at you right now with a big scope stuck in my head. No, safety, 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 safety. If you're going to do this kind of stuff, people, please think ahead. Ask questions. That's what I'm doing. That's why I'm putting this down. I'm like, okay, number one, muzzle brakes must be threaded. If your gun is such a badass piece of kit that it's going to break you if it fails, please thread your muzzle brake. Now, slip-on brakes, screw-on brakes, all of this stuff is that if your gun is a 338 something or another and it's just going to hurt, big deal, so it hurt if the brake fails. But on a 50 BMG, the rules change, all right? They just flat change. This gun will break you. So, lesson number one, brakes must be threaded. Lesson number two, and this ties into so much stuff. Remember, I'm trying to do this on the cheap. This is what I'm trying to share with you, is where I'm having to spend money and how you can do it on the... I will say this. Don't even bother with a factory sizing die. This factory sizing die will barely take a case in backwards. This factory sizing die is so bloody tight that it tries to jam on brand new brass. Once it's been fired, and I bought a bunch of rounds from another friend on the internet who runs a cartridge case reclamation company, and I bought, I don't know, 100 rounds or 500 rounds or something of fired 50 BMG that has gone through a reclaiming thing, and it's all nicked and it's dinged, and you can see how it's crooked and it's just cleaned up. This stuff's been fired in a variety of guns all across the spectrum, probably half of them semi-automatics. It's deformed. I got so tired of fighting it that I decided to open up my chambers. And I was not prepared for this part, but here are some things that I did. I'm going to go to my notes. I didn't even draw a picture, so I'm going to draw a picture for you right now. This is something I did, as I've said before, for the same reason as a dog licks its balls. Because I can. 50 BMG chamber, shaped something like this. It's a nasty chamber to begin with. It's tapered too far. But the problem is that I have one 50 BMG chamber that came in a, well, it's a Noreen chamber. I have another one that came in a barrel. I've got 7 barrels now. And I bought another used one so I can use it for fire form for, anyway, none of this matters to you, but I've got 2 chambers that are existing that I've been working with. And I've got my reamer. I ordered a match reamer, only because it was the only one in stock that day that had the proper size neck in my guesstimation. It was too skinny at the back. I knew that from the start. But I figured I am willing to individually recut the chambers in my barrels. And that's where I am right now. I've got 3 chambers down, the neck is working perfectly, the cartridges are going in and out, but they're hanging up in the back because this match 50 BMG reamer that I bought is the right length here at the gap space, it's the right diameter here, it's nice and tight here, but in the back it's too tight. So, I set my lathe. This is redneck hokum, I'll tell you. There's a camera shot of the way I set the taper on my lathe and where I set it and how, and I won't go into how I extended the angles and this and that. But I figured this so that if I started cutting and I made the back here 20 thousandths larger, and I set my taper such that it was supposed to net out right here. So I flared the chamber, chucked it back in the lathe, set it up, and made my chamber 20 thou bigger at the back. And I have got to tell you, peeps, if and when I ever order a 50 BMG reamer, which, here again, I'm going to go through the things I've had to spend money on and the things I haven't, and how I've saved money. Now I didn't know that I saved money here because I spent time having to recut my chamber, but I saved time and money because ordering a reamer right now is a year out. So here are a couple of cases that have been repeatedly fired, and I'm going to throw these down here just because, again, these are such beauties. This is what I want a case to look like. This is what I have learned is the correct, the proper, and it shows up so big on these monster big cases. These have been loaded, and the neck is so well fitted that I don't even have to neck size. I fire, I take out the primer, I fire, I take out the primer, I fire. And here I'm going to go through some of the other things I've learned just because I can. Again, this is just an informational thing. I'm going to be covering ground like biggity bang because I'm just showing you stuff that works and stuff that doesn't. This little guy right here is a primer seating assembly that came with the Lee gear. I've done a bunch of research, I've checked, I've talked to people, I even tried 2 other primer seaters, and I'm convinced that this little primer seater assembly that comes with the Lee 50 BMG kit is as good as anything out there, unless you're going to pay $500 and then another few hundred for customized. So this primer seater, properly used, works. The next problem I run into is these military cases are crimped. Now, swaging assembly, $300-400. You got to get set up with all this stuff, and I'm not dissing those. I'm not saying they're bad in any way. They are probably the correct way to do this. But what I did is something completely different. I took these cases, and with these tools right here, I'm just gonna, this is gonna end up being a tool episode. I'm just gonna go through and show you what I'm doing as I go, because I'm having a blast. I am shooting. This is great. Take your paramilitary case that's got a big old honking crimp around the back of it. First thing you do is you take the depriming tool out of that useless die over there. It's not useless, but it's too bloody tight. Today I'm going to take it out on the lathe and I'm going to burn it out because now I've come up with a size, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Take the primer discombobulator out of it, stick it in there, stick it on one of these here Sinclair ogive nuts, and bash it with a hammer. Now this is a 3-pound brass hammer, but I started with a little leather mallet. No! You gotta bash these suckers. So this is the gear for decapping the first time. Then I had to come up with the next phase. Like, what do I do with that stupid crimp? I was gonna go build a swedge tool, a swager. I didn't know the correct size, but I decided before I do that, I'm gonna go after it a little bit. I'm just going to go after one of them. Let's see if I've got one I could probably... No, I've already reseated a primer in this one. Okay, this one's been swaged out. Anyway, I just used a deburring tool. I swaged, and because I'm good with hand tools, most of these crimps occur in one place, or maybe 2 places. You can pressure over against that crimp and wipe it out. And so, a little bit of that, and then I took a hook tool, which, believe, if this is boring, I'm sorry. Go watch panda bears eating. I took a horseshoe nail. This is something most people are probably not even aware of, a horseshoe nail. It's a very, see that little hook on the end? Very malleable. I got a bunch of these because I use them for rust bluing. I turn the end over, I stick it in the primer hole as I'm reaming, and I pull. I pull with that little hook. And when there's no hook, when the thing is gone, it easily accepts the primer. I go, it's now reamed, it's got a slight chamfer around it, boom, away I go. So, I had to as I said, this is an information video. I'm trying to make the size chamber that I would want. If this ever becomes a commercial venture, if I start to sell these things, I'm going to have to buy a reamer that's properly sized. They don't make such a thing. Nobody has ever made a properly sized 50 BMG reamer. Properly sized the way I want to see it. The way I size my BRs, my PPCs, my 47s, my 308s, my Bot 6s, my WSMs. The method is sound. It's acting on these just as nicely as it acts on. I mean, this big 50 BMG is just running like butter. So, I'm so happy with the way these have come out. I can now use these for illustration purposes to show. That chamber right there is 20 thousandths, 10 thou per side. My cases cull out beautifully, just as though, see, I'm going down the whole match road. I'm setting this up as a match gun, just like I've set up others. The hardest thing is going to be making something stiff enough that it doesn't flex. So I've got the huge barrels. I can take care of the action joint flex. I'm cutting the barrels down beyond it, but the stock interface is where it comes to next. There's the big, but in the meantime, it has to be tractable. It has to be amenable. So right now, I'm working up loads. I'm running them over I'm using this stupid Labrador, which I'm ready to throw in the garbage because it is a finicky piece of crap. But anyway, I've got the recoil sled running, and it makes it so easy to run the Labrador. I'm getting shots about half the time. This little barrel is easily running 2,700 feet per second. Factory stuff comes out of these little 24-inch barrels with 750 good Hornady factory ammunition, which is no good to me, but I'm using it to establish a baseline, is averaging 2610. Well, that's already useful, and I can go up beyond that. I haven't wrecked a case yet. Working on it. I will blow some stuff up. But I had to work out the primer seating, the decapping, how to get rid of the print, opening up the chamber, which I've done. I drew this little picture. I think I have the chamber sized exactly the way I want it. The next step, I now have to go through this in my head. The taper in these cases is so heinous that there's a tiny bit of hang up. So far I haven't been fighting it, but I have a hunch when these cases have been fired 30 times, I'm either, one, going to have a really good sizing die and see if I can figure out how to not get this shoulder to slip, or my reamer might be improved. I might blow it out to 10 TPI. It doesn't need to be bigger, so to me I'm thinking if I'm going to blow it out to 10 TPI, I better shorten it up or something. I don't know. I'm just so excited about this. This is stuff down the road. Okay? So, get rid of this paperwork because I want to show you where I am now. Oh, I turned 10 thou off the die. That's another thing. I keep notes. This is called Chambers and Sizing. June 16, 2022. This just happened. Got the tight crush. I'm fighting with the fact that when this is all said and done, it must fire factory ammunition. And it must fire everything from Hornady good stuff or Norma or whatever to Israeli or Arab or Chinese or whatever off-the-rack military stuff. So I'm sizing it, and I'm at the point where I've got a perfect crush fit on this Nosler Hornady. This Hornady brass, and I've done a bunch of work with it, but the problem is it will not accept certain other rounds. And even though I turned 10 thou off the bottom of this die, as I was saying before, I've already shortened the die. I'm already deforming shoulders. When I take one of these military shoulders and I run it in there, it's beating the shoulder up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pan over and show you a couple of things. Number one, we're going to do the Bertha Butt Boogie and show you my latest and my greatest. The Beast. I called down to Macmillan. They had one. It's a pig. It weighs 10 pounds. These are available up to 13 pounds and I think down to about 8. I called McMillan and said, hey, I got a project going. And basically, these East Ridge actions, guy got back to me, and I bought a couple more. They're not here. They're out getting chambered up. I have now 4 50 BMGs going. Now I'm going to be able, so I called down there and said, hey, have you got an old rat out in the back somewhere, something that somebody ordered and didn't take and that you're willing to sell? Flat topped. I'm going to gut the whole thing. I'm going to put a big aluminum rail in there. So I'm going to take this Big Bertha. No, I guess the action's called the Big Bertha. This is called the Beast, number 2. And I'm going to do my aluminum inlet, big old block of aluminum in here, a bedding block to suck that action down to, the extra screws that we've talked about. So we're going the whole route there. So now we're going to have, from my lightest, the screen door project, to my Noreen project, to another screen door that's going to be not a screen door, but made from a billet of aluminum. By the way, while I'm talking about it, this is the screen door. I'm headed over to it. You can only see a little bit of it. See if I can get that pig into focus, because I'm going to show you something else. I was explaining how I've got it perfectly chambered to this, but I want a little more. I'm dropping this chamber down. I just set up. I'm dropping this chamber down about, just 3/4 of a thou, if that. And I wanted to show you how even this big pig cuts just fine by hand. Watch this. I don't even have a bushing on this thing because all I'm doing is bringing the shoulder back. See the cuts on there? See the shavings? This is the flute that's got the most shavings. The rest of them have got a little less shavings on them. So I'm rolling this one up so you can really see. I've got this knocked down. It's time now to end the recording. Not get distracted by this. And check my sizing. But I'm readjusting the headspace on this guy in the field. Okay, so I did get those. It's so hard for me to tell. And I'm here to tell you that one of the last things I wanted to check out was, can I recut the chamber? Can I increase the headspace at home with that big 50 BMG? And the answer is absolutely. Change it. Piece of cake. So I'm honing in on the absolute ultimate chamber here. And I just wanted to share my happiness with you that everything is coming together. All of the rules that I've made for little stuff are coming together just fine with big stuff. And everything is working. So, enjoy the day. We'll catch you on the flipper.